Thank you all for joining us today. My name is Mausmi Patel. I'm the Assistant Director of Alumni Engagement here at Georgia College. And today we're discussing the housing market and the impacts that COVID-19 has had or may have on the housing market. So joining me today, I have two realtors, Sheppard and Nan Keipper. And we appreciate your time. I'm going to go ahead and give you two a minute to introduce yourselves to our audience.
Go ahead, Nan.
My name is Nan Keipper. I live on Lake Oconee. I've been with Coldwell Banker for just over a year. I have been on the lake for 5, native Georgian, actually attended Georgia College, so I'm very familiar with this area, have been for a while. I have a chemistry degree from Georgia College, where I first went to work at Coca-Cola and then got into sales. So I've been in sales for many, many years, medical sales for a long time. And we also did some rental investment real estate properties. So it was kind of a likely match to get into sales of real estate because I had a background in both. And I love it here on the lake, love to show people around my home, which I love.
Great. Hey everyone, my name is Sheppard. I'm with Ansley Atlanta Real Estate in our in-town office, but I split my time between Atlanta and Milledgeville and do historic Milledgeville, like Sinclair as well as Atlanta in-town and the whole metro area. Been with Ansley since about 3.5 years, but I've been in real estate since I was a student at Georgia College, actually, since 2008. I was a business management major, minors in rhetoric and political science at Georgia College. Also have some rental property, so I guess we both have a little bit of insight as landlords and how that's going with the coronavirus as well. But thrilled to be here this morning. Thank you, Mausmi, for the invitation.
Absolutely. Thank you both. So for those of you just joining us, I do want to mention that if you have questions for our realtors, you can comment them in the comment section, and we'll be monitoring that, and then I can relay those questions to you both. But we're just going to go ahead and ask you some topics that people have had some concern around, and hopefully we'll kind of answer most of the questions that people have. So for starters, there's a bit of concern about the impacts that COVID-19 may have on the market because currently the interest rates are still fairly low. So is that something we may see changing in the near future with interest rates raising or other impacts that we may see?
Ross, I'll let you take this one.
Okay. So one thing when people ask me what's going to happen in any regard to the real estate market, I remind the person that no one is a fortune teller, and we can only look at historical trends and look at data and give our best educated guess as to what is going to happen. Yes, interest rates are at a historic low. I texted my we have an in-house loan officer with Angel Oak. I texted him this morning and told him we were doing this. I was like, what's the rate today for someone with, for a conventional loan with good credit? And he said 2.99%, which is historically low. And for people who are closer to my age and don't know, I mean, pretty much since my adult life after the recession in 2008, interest rates have been historically low, and they've fluctuated a little bit. But my office has this great graphic that we printed out, and I can send a PDF if anybody wants to see this, but my parents bought their first house in 1991, and the average interest rate in 91 was 9.25%. No one would consider taking out a mortgage today at 9.25%. That is just insane. So, and the high was, let's see, 16, in 1980, 80, 81, 82, 16% average interest rate. So interest rates have literally never been lower. And as far as where they're going, I heard on the radio this morning, actually, that the Fed chair is interested in doing whatever the Fed can do in order to stimulate the economy. So the Fed doesn't spend money, they loan money, and they buy mortgage-backed securities. So the Fed is indicating that they want Congress to spend more, which looks like that may not be happening. So we have every reason to believe that the Fed will continue to buy mortgage-backed securities so that our lenders have money to lend, and to keep the interest rate as low as they can, because those are the two tools that the Fed has to stimulate the economy, not spending. So especially if Congress doesn't spend any more money to stimulate the economy, we have every indication from the Fed that they'll keep rates low. That's my insight into that.
Thank you. Ross, I'm sorry, Nan, is there anything else you'd like to add to that?
No, I agree that they're wanting to stimulate the economy, and I would not anticipate it going up. And I remember buying a house in the 80s, and the interest rate at that point, later 80s, was in the 7s, which seemed like great interest rates for a house. I mean,
And
come
what was
on.
the price of the house? 50 grand?
Yeah, well, yeah, it was probably pretty close. I think it was 100 in Gwinnett County. But
Okay,
yeah, I mean, it's just amazing how low it is at this point. It never seen anything like this before, but the economy needs it, and that's what they do. So
Definitely, very true.
And one other comment, I think it's important to remember that even if we do see a relative increase, even if it increases by a point, which would be, you know, a 50% increase, we'd still be in the high threes, which last year we were saying, oh boy, look how low the rates are. So even a significant percentage increase over where we're at now would still be considered historically low.
Awesome. Thank you both. So to move off of that, with unemployment still somewhat rising, do you see impacts on rental property owners and people that are renting currently through this COVID-19?
well, in my area, we have a lot of shorter term rentals. So there's vacation rentals allowed in the rentals property. And, you know, they put the kibosh on that not long ago, that you couldn't do any of the shorter term rentals. So that hurt them a lot. We still have a very robust rental market here. It's unusual because we have a lot of new construction. People will move here, rent for a year while they're going under construction. So we have a very strong rental market in this area. It may not be quite the same as other areas, but here the rental market is excellent. For the landlord, it's harder for someone looking for a place, but for the landlord, I think it's very good here in this market. But there are definitely different rules now that landlords have to go by, which puts them in a much more precarious situation financially. So,
yeah, I think that the impact on the rental market is something that is yet to be seen, because people obviously, if people are exhausting their finances and exhausting their savings, you know, we're still kind of on the front end of this thing, right? So as people are being laid off and unemployment rises, it's not like they're, you know, it may be a month or two before they run out of money, right? So I tried to read up on some of this, you know, to answer these questions ahead of time, but some of the things that I'm seeing that could be of concern is that the people who are more likely to be renters are people who are more likely to be economically vulnerable, right? Because people either choose not to enter the housing market to purchase something, either they choose not to or they want to and they can't, right? So from the purchase and sale perspective, most of our professional jobs aren't being impacted in the way that a lot of lower income jobs are, and service jobs, things that require face-to-face. I mean, here we are all still working from home. We've got our computers. So the impact on the rental market, I think, is going to be something to watch more closely. And if you're a landlord, I've had some clients that are landlords and they're calling me and saying, hey, what do we do? You know, some of my tenants say they can't pay, and my answer is you just have to work with people on a case-by-case basis and just kind of figure it out, right? But I think the rental market definitely is going to be more volatile than the sales market.
And I'm not sure even local governments know how to handle the issue, because it's a complicated one. You can't evict anybody in a property that is federally guaranteed with federal money, that it's not backed by the government. But yet, you know, that somebody goes to the court, is the court going to investigate what the loan is? You know, I mean, so it's a complicated issue to even go through the process, because I'm not sure everybody involved, even locally in the state government, really understands how the CARES Act works. So
that's definitely true. And again, most of our, I mean, I'm assuming that most of the people that are tuning in today aren't in the category of our, you know, most vulnerable among us, but those are the people that are also least likely to have access to an attorney or know what to do. One thing that the city of Atlanta has done is that they are basically, the city of Atlanta is, the housing authority is guaranteeing rent payments for anyone that's using a housing voucher. So for a landlord that might have Section 8 housing, those people are still going to get paid. And I was watching, if any of my fellow youngsters watch the Patriot Act on Netflix, it's a great show. Last night's, or not last night, but last week's episode, I watched it last night. They were talking about just this, and you're more likely, if you're looking for a house to rent or a place to rent, you're probably better off as a renter renting from a private landlord, because that person is not going to, in general, have as broad of a financial capacity as a major corporation. So they're probably more willing to work with you. I have rental property, and if my tenants don't pay my rent, then I can't pay my mortgage, right? Like, I literally, so evicting anybody is not in my interest right now either, because now I have an empty house and I still have a mortgage. So I'd rather have a tenant pay me something than to just evict that person punitively. So you're likely, if anyone watching this is renting, or about, you know, maybe you've just graduated and you're looking for a place to rent and you've got a job, but you're not sure about it, my advice would be to find a private individual to rent from versus a big corporation or management company or a big condo, or excuse me, apartment complex, because those big corporations are going to give you very little grace, and they're going to smack you with the fees and whatever they can, because that's just how their business models work in general, right? I think we kind of got off on a tangent there.
but also be really cognizant in reading the lease as to what allows you to depart a lease. A lot of times there's a transfer, you know, if you get job transfer, or then they will let you pay 2 months out instead of completing the whole. So just read your lease and know what you're signing. Always.
That's a good point. So for those who are maybe stuck in those leases and they're having trouble paying their rent, does the CARES Act help in any way? What exactly is the CARES Act, and who is that made for?
Oh, I looked it up because I could not remember what an acronym was, but it's Corona Aid Relief and Economic Security Act. So that's what that was, what it is. It was good for 120 days and started in March, the end of March. So it is only for federally backed mortgages, like I mentioned earlier. So if it's a, you know, Fannie Mae, a Freddie Mac, an FHA, VA, USDA, not a lot of those around, but USDA, you're covered with this and they can't evict you. However, you as a renter may not know the loan and how the loan was processed. And that, again, is what happened if your landlord goes and files an eviction, the court may not know if it's covered under the CARES Act or not. So the CARES Act is there to protect people, but it is kludgy when it comes to how it's carried about. And then, you know, in other areas have, like Atlanta, they take further action. So know what your local government, if they're doing anything special or above the CARES Act. I reached out to the governor's office about this for Georgia and I haven't gotten a response from them yet, but I don't believe Georgia has a blanket
I don't think so either.
coverage. It's just,
Didn't find anything.
yeah. I mean, Atlanta, as far as I could see, is the only one that has special coverage for this. The state of Georgia doesn't appear to, but the CARES Act covers a whole lot of people because that's almost everything. I mean, there are some, you know, personally guaranteed loans that, you know, they don't have to fall under this, so they could evict.
Okay.
One thing that's important as well, whether you're renting or paying a mortgage, the CARES Act does not provide for forgiveness, only forbearance. So you're just kicking the can down the road. So if you can't pay your mortgage now, they're supposed to move those payments to the end, but some lenders are putting it in a balloon, and you're going to have a big payment due, you know, when this period is over with or whatever. So it's still not great. And the best thing to do is to, again, talk with your lender, or if you are experiencing financial difficulties and you cannot pay your rent or your mortgage, the first thing you should do is talk to your landlord or your lender and say, hey, look, here's the deal. What should we do about it? Versus just not paying and waiting to see what happens, because that ticket is going to come due eventually, and it's going to be worse at the end than trying to deal with it now. So that's,
And communicate with the landlord, because as a former landlord, because we don't own property anymore, but as a former landlord, you don't want to hear crickets when somebody doesn't pay their bill. Just tell them something. Tell them, I can give you $250. I can just communicate so that they don't assume that you've just moved out and they'll never hear from you again. So communication is, with anything, is very important, but let them know where you stand so that they don't make the wrong assumption.
That's a really good point. I'm sure a lot of people are in a situation right now where they are struggling to make rent payments. So hopefully just talking to your landlord can create some type of an understanding mutual agreement. So moving off of that, are there any silver linings to this situation? Is this a good time to buy a house? Is this a good time to be remodeling? You know, any possible silver lining that we can look at?
Well, as Ross mentioned earlier, the interest rates are phenomenal. So if you want to get into a home and you have a down payment, this is a terrific time to take advantage of an extremely low mortgage rate. And the mortgage rate lasts with you for a long time. You know, that's not something that's 2 or 3 years of good mortgage rate. It's up to 30 years. So you can take advantage of that for years and years to come and pay your mortgage off faster, much easier to do. So it's great for that. The inventory is a little lower, but the people who have their homes on the market right now want to sell their homes. So there's not a lot of, I'll just put it on the market and have people come through my house just to see. They really are interested in selling the house. So that's also a good situation for buyers.
Yeah. So also refinancing. I mean, if your interest rate is anywhere near 3.5 or more, it's worth calling a lender to see if you can get a better rate, which would just lower the interest rate on, or lower your payment for the same house that you already have. And if there are any first-time buyers or people that are thinking about getting into the market that don't really understand what all this means, as Nan said, your interest rate when you buy your house or refinance your house, that rate stays with you for the life of the mortgage. So if you get a 3% mortgage this month, you're paying 3% on that loan for the rest of for the life of that loan, whether you pay it off in 30 years or when you sell it and you'll get a new loan when you buy something else. But because of that, it is a good time to remodel, because if you don't have cash to do a remodel, but let's say you've been in your house for a few years and you've got some equity, you can do a home equity loan, and basically you may be able to, depending on what your rate was when you bought the house and your combination of equity and savings on a better rate, you may be able to borrow $25,000 to update your kitchen and roll that into a refi after a home equity loan, and your payment may not change at all, but you are still in the same house that you love, paying the same amount every month, but you got a brand new kitchen or brand new bathrooms or whatever. So yes, that is a silver lining there. Another silver lining, we haven't seen prices go down yet. So whether prices will respond to COVID-19 remains to be seen, but the inventory is down. But there are fewer sellers in the market and there are fewer buyers in the market. So it's been a sort of neutral effect on the supply and demand, because supply has gone down and demand has gone down. So the pressure from either side is still basically the same as it was before. I have seen a lot more activity in the market since they announced the sort of slow reopening. I've been out doing showings with people. I wrote an offer on the house yesterday. And this was a house that had just been remodeled. It's in Decatur, and it went on the market 3 days ago. This wasn't my listing, I'm working with the buyer. There were 3 offers on the house in 3 days because it was a great house. It was under 300. It was what people were looking for. And there are buyers out there. I'm working with 2 other sets of first-time buyers who have similar price ranges, and they want to be inside the perimeter, but they don't want to spend more than 300. They're literally just waiting for the right house to come on the market, and as soon as it comes on the market, we're going to jump in and buy the thing. So if anyone out there has a house to sell for 300,000 inside the perimeter, please call me. So I mean, people are still out there, and they're ready to, and there are sellers that are ready to sell, and there are buyers that are ready to buy. So is it a good time to sell your house? Sure. Is it a good time to buy a house? Sure. Another thing I tell people when they're trying to determine personally whether or not it's a good time to buy is, what are you paying in rent right now? Especially first-time buyers that aren't familiar with this process. If you're in Atlanta and you're paying $1,500 a month for a 1-bedroom apartment in Midtown, which is basically what you have to pay, often more, look at what type of house you can afford for that same monthly payment. So for many people, especially if you have a good down payment, you can spend less money per month. So that's an important thing to consider whether you decide to buy or continue renting, is what is my monthly housing cost looking like versus what is the price that I'm paying for this house. Because people get really hung up on the price. But again, the fluctuation in the interest rate, if you pay $300,000 for a house right now with a 3% rate, and then next year somebody else pays $300,000 for the same house with a 4% rate, well, you've spent the same amount of money on the same similar houses, but the person with a better interest rate is spending a lot less per month. So those are things to consider as well.
And home improvement must be running gangbusters, because we went to the Lowe's in Athens yesterday and it was scary in the parking lot. It was scary inside. It was just cram-packed. The Home Depot here at the lake, people are home, so they're looking around more, going, hey, we got some time. Let's put in some more landscaping. Let's finish this wall. I'm doing a headboard in my bed. People are home more, so they're doing so much more home improvement. And it's a great time to do that, because your home, take advantage of the time, improve your home. There's so many. One of the couples I'm working with now just sold their townhome on the lake, and they are having regrets because they've done work on it and it looks great. And now they're like, why did we sell it? We shouldn't have sold it. So sometimes when you do home improvement, you realize, man, this is really nicer than I thought it was. Maybe we should stick around for a little while. So people may, take advantage of the time, do some improvement, because improving your home is a great way to spend money. It's a great investment. It will come back. We'll come back to you that way.
Last thing I want to say, and then I guess we have time for questions. especially with first-time buyers. If you're nervous about, a lot of people are maybe renting with roommates, but they've got a job now and they've got their down payment and they think they're ready to buy something, but they're just nervous about taking that leap and having that whole mortgage payment. It is a great idea to buy a, say, 2 or 3 bedroom place that you can afford on your own right now, but get a roommate, because that person, you may be able to let's say you've got a good friend. Actually, one of my associates, Tyler, who also went to Georgia College, just graduated last year. He just bought his first place in Atlanta, and he's got a roommate who actually lived with him in Milledgeville as well, but he's able to rent to his roommate. He's getting a better deal than he would get if he went out and got a place on his own or rented, with another person in an apartment complex. And Tyler's getting basically half of his mortgage paid by his friend living in his house. So it could be a win-win situation. If you have friends and maybe someone that you're renting with now, and one of you is ready to buy, financially has the capacity to buy something, but you like living together or whatever, and the other person is happy to continue renting, you might both be able to save money while one of you is building equity in your first house. So that's a kind of hybrid model. If everybody wins that way. You both save a little bit of money. One of you is building wealth. And then when you get tired of having a roommate or one of you moves on, you just live there by yourself or whatever you want to do, or sell the thing and make some money. And I keep saying last thing. This probably won't be the last thing either. And I say this because I do work with a lot of first-time buyers, and I forget how much many of them don't know, because you have no reason to know these things if you've never had researched it before. But you don't have to have 20% down to buy a house. A lot of people think that is what you need for a conventional conforming mortgage. FHA, which is the Federal Housing Administration, will insure loans with as little as 3.5% down. You do have to pay a little bit higher interest rate because they have a mortgage insurance to protect the lender against your chance of default because of the additional risk that's there. But again, with rates as low as they are, with the percent or 1.25% mortgage insurance on an FHA loan, your total APR still might be around 4 or 4.25. And for a lot of people, that's still less per month to buy that $250,000 townhouse or condo than you would be paying to rent that same place. So even if you don't have 20% down, there is no harm in talking to a lender and just crunching some numbers to see what can you afford with your current financial situation, and is that more advantageous from a cash flow perspective than continuing to pay whatever rent that you're paying right now.
And that higher interest rate due to the mortgage insurance will not last the entire length of the loan. So even if it's 10 years, after 10 years, you'll revert back to the 2.99%. So, we still, if you can in any way take advantage of the low interest rates now, it's a great time. Even if it's temporarily higher, in the long run, you'll be better off.
Perfect. Thank you both. We do have some questions coming in from the audience, and I want to remind everyone to comment your questions on the live stream, and we'll try to get to those. So one that we have is, do you see any impacts on people building a house right now? If they were in the middle of building a house when all of this happened, is there any struggle there? Maybe materials are hard to find, or building may have stopped due to COVID-19?
I haven't seen buildings stop. I know that they are, if you go to Home Depot, you'll notice in Lowe's, there's not as much lumber on the shelf as there used to be. So I know that they are controlling the flow of lumber out. So there might be a bit more resources for that. In home construction, you're using big wood shingles, things like that. I know there are other industries that are much more affected by it that have parts that are all made in China because those have been delayed. You can't get a boat engine repaired because it might be 3 months before they get the part. So, in construction here, it's still going on. It's outdoors. The workers are still working. So I haven't seen that as of yet here in this area. Ross, have you seen a change in Atlanta?
No, I really haven't. If anything, the reduced traffic has made it easier for the people that are doing construction to get around and do what they need to do. I've noticed some large scale construction, especially in Midtown. There's more building going on. But this obviously, most of these projects were underway before this happened anyway. So there's more building going on in Midtown now than there has been in the last, I don't know, however many years, 20 years or something. I don't know the exact statistic, but if anything, it has honestly been a little bit better because when there's 2 lanes of Peachtree blocked off, it's not quite so bad. There aren't as many people on the road. But another thing that's interesting about the construction market and the new housing, especially in Atlanta, and I mean the trend is true all over the United States, but as rural areas continue to lose population, and especially in Georgia, as expensive as Atlanta is compared to the rural areas in the state, Atlanta is still a relative bargain when you compare it to other metro areas in the country, right? Like if you're comparing what you can rent or buy in Atlanta to New York City or LA, for instance, I mean, it's less than half. I mean, you can get twice as much for your money. So all of the sort of forecasts and things that we are seeing is that population growth in Atlanta is still outpacing the housing supply. So we are not adding enough housing units to keep up with the increase in population. So regardless of what happens with the economy in general, that is going to continue to put more demand on the limited supply of housing in Atlanta, which means that your prices are going to, we hope, at least remain stable, but have every reason to believe that they will increase because of the basic laws of supply and demand. It's another good reason to buy in Atlanta, especially if you've been renting, because rent is increasing in Atlanta faster than any other metro area in the country for that very reason. There are so many people that are moving here, especially millennials. I had another little graph, I don't know if I printed it, but it's one of the top cities for young people and people fresh out of college, and most of those people are going to be renting as soon as they move to town. So there's tons of people renting, and even with all the new apartments that are being built, there's still just not enough. So that means rental prices keep going up, which makes it more attractive to choose to get out of that market and into the purchase market.
I have a child that just graduated last year who lives in the DC area, and I can tell you that rent, she would love to pay rent in Atlanta because DC is very, very expensive. But I warned her. Mama wanted her in Atlanta, but that didn't happen.
Oh no.
They'll come back one day. They always do.
I know. It's home, right?
That's right. Awesome. We've got a few more questions in the comments. So we've got one. There was a recent Wall Street Journal article about Airbnb hosts facing rental issues amid COVID-19. So with that in mind, do you see a surge in inventory for home selling since the rental income isn't coming in with Airbnb?
I think that is logical. If someone bought I may have read the same article. If someone bought a house for the purpose of renting it out for short-term vacation rentals, and now they don't have any revenue coming in and they've got a mortgage on that property, yeah, they probably need to sell it. Probably what I would see, or what I would imagine, and again, I have no data for this, this is just what I think, a better solution for that person may be to try to get a long-term tenant in that property versus trying to sell it, unless they're just tired of dealing with it, or if they think they might stand to make a profit depending on when they bought the property. If it were mine and my short-term rental thing wasn't panning out because no one's traveling, I would just try to get a 12-month lease in place there, or something like that. So I don't know how many dedicated Airbnb type units there are as a percentage of the total housing market, but I haven't seen anything from any sort of industry experts that give us a reason to think there would be like a sort of panic selling of those type properties, or even if there are enough of those to sort of have an impact on the market in general. But I honestly don't really know.
Yeah, I have to agree. I don't know that there's that many. And I think that people are going to be closer to home for the next year. I think people aren't going to fly on vacations for the next year. They're not going to go out of the country for the next year. So if you have, you may also see more people, like here at the lake, we exploded as soon as there was work from home in places. Because if you're going to have to work from home, you might as well go to the lake and work, right? So I mean, our Publix is sold out. There's people everywhere. The traffic is worse, and so my own neighborhood, the parking lots are more full. You know, we are really, our population probably went up 30%, maybe 40, because people didn't go on spring break to where they were going to go. They came here, you know, to grandmother's house or the aunt's house or something. So I think you're going to see a lot more people staying more locally. So if your Airbnb is in an area where people would like to vacation, yes. Now in Atlanta, it's a convention center. Things are going to be a little different because you probably rent a lot to some convention people too. So that, you know, I think if you're in a resort area or a vacation area, if you're near the beach with an Airbnb, you may be okay. I mean, I don't know. And do you want people coming in your home? So that's the other issue, is how are you going to address sanitizing the property after someone leaves to cover your risk?
That's a good point. Thank you. And then we're getting to our last question here. So this is going back to home improvements. From your perspective, what are the most impactful improvements to make to your home to maximize the resale value?
Kitchens and bathrooms.
Yeah, and it really, really just depends, again, when you bought the property and how much equity you have, because you're probably not going to recoup that. If you spend $40,000 on a kitchen, you have not increased the value of your home by $40,000. But if you've already got a significant amount of equity in your property, there's a difference in value and desirability. Okay, so if your home is worth X amount of money, but the kitchen is 30 years old, there are fewer people that are willing to buy it at that price, even if that is the correct market price based on an appraisal. So if you spend $40,000 to redo your kitchen, you've increased the value of your property some, but some of that money is just money that's spent, but you also get the value of enjoying that for the amount of time that you are in the house. So if you're doing remodels for the purpose of selling the property, you have to be really careful not to overspend and overinvest. And there are ways to do that. But definitely bathrooms and kitchens affect the desirability. And what I mean when I say desirability is the likelihood of that the house will sell at its market price, because people like the way that it looks and they like the features.
And you can do a lot of visual improvement without spending a lot of money. So put in a new vanity in a bathroom, just even the new top to the bathroom,
right,
makes a huge difference visually, as opposed to gutting the whole bathroom and starting over. You're going to spend too much money. Replace the cabinet fronts on your kitchen cabinets if that's a problem. You know, do some things that make it look better without starting over. But if you're going to live there a few more years, do it before you move, because enjoy that while you got it. I've done that in houses before when I'm going, dang, why didn't I do this sooner? You know?
Amazing. Thank you both. I think that was very helpful. And thank you so much for giving us your time today. We appreciate you answering our questions, and hopefully our audience got some answers to some questions that we've had floating around. So to our audience, we'll be doing more Facebook Lives in the next few weeks. So definitely keep watch on our Facebook page to keep up with those. And thank you to Ross and Nan for your time today.
Thanks for the invite.
And if
Absolutely.
anybody, has follow-up questions, you can get our contact information from Mausmi or whatever. We're happy to.
Yes. If you would like to reach out to Ross or Nan, you can email us at alumni@gcsu.edu and we can connect you.
Thank you.
We done?
We're done. All right. I'm going to go.
Hey, everybody.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.